When the United States entered World War II, it faced a dilemma unlike any it had encountered before. The nation had been attacked by Japan, its fleet damaged at Pearl Harbor, and public anger was directed overwhelmingly toward the Pacific. Yet almost immediately, American political and military leaders made a decision that seemed counterintuitive to many. Germany, not Japan, would be defeated first. This choice would shape every major operation of the war, determine how resources were allocated, and ultimately influence the outcome of the conflict on a global scale. The Germany First strategy was not born from emotion or revenge, but from cold strategic calculation rooted in geography, industrial capacity, alliance politics, and a clear understanding of where the war could truly be won or lost. Long before Pearl Harbor, American and British planners had already been discussing the likelihood of a global war centered in Europe. Germany stood at the heart of the Axis alliance, possessing the strongest industrial base, the most advanced military technology, and the most experienced armed forces. By 1941, Nazi Germany controlled most of continental Europe, threatened the Atlantic supply lines, and posed an existential danger to Britain and the Soviet Union. If Germany were allowed to defeat either of these powers, the balance of the war would tilt decisively. The United States understood that a Europe dominated by Germany would be far more dangerous, far more difficult to challenge, and potentially unreachable in the future. Japan, by contrast, was a powerful but geographically constrained enemy. Its empire depended on naval control and extended supply lines across the Pacific. While dangerous, Japan lacked the industrial depth to fight a prolonged war against a fully mobilized United States. American planners believed Japan could be contained, delayed, and eventually defeated, even if the bulk of resources were directed elsewhere. Germany could not be treated the same way. Every month Germany remained undefeated increased the risk that Europe would fall permanently under Axis control. Alliance politics played a critical role in this decision. Britain had been fighting Germany alone for over 2 years and was nearing the limits of its endurance. The Soviet Union, invaded by Germany in 1941, was absorbing enormous losses but remained the primary force tying down the bulk of the German army. If either Britain collapsed or the Soviet Union fell, Germany would be free to consolidate its power, redirect its forces, and fortify its defenses. American leaders recognized that their allies needed immediate relief, not promises of future action. A strategy that prioritized Germany was, in effect, a strategy to keep the alliance alive. Logistics and geography further reinforced this conclusion. The Atlantic Ocean, while dangerous due to German submarines, was a shorter and more manageable supply route than the vast distances of the Pacific. Supporting large-scale ground operations in Europe was difficult, but achievable. The Pacific War required enormous naval and air resources, island-by-island campaigns, and long supply chains that consumed time and materials. A simultaneous full-scale effort in both theaters was impossible at the beginning of the war. Choices had to be made, and Europe was where American power could be applied most decisively, most quickly. Another critical factor was time. Germany was at the height of its power in the early years of the war. Its armies were experienced, its industry was mobilized, and its leadership believed victory was within reach. The longer the war continued, the more Germany would be forced into defensive positions, stretched across multiple fronts and weakened by sustained pressure. The United States aimed to accelerate this process by applying its growing industrial and military strength where it would have the greatest cumulative effect. Japan, meanwhile, would inevitably face a war of attrition it could not win. The Germany First strategy also reflected an understanding of modern warfare itself. World War II was not a series of isolated battles, but a single interconnected system. Resources used in one theater were unavailable in another. Shipping, fuel, aircraft, and manpower had to be prioritized. By focusing on Germany, the United States ensured that its production supported a coherent strategic goal rather than being scattered across competing objectives. This focus allowed for long-term planning, coordination with allies, and the gradual buildup of overwhelming force. Importantly, this decision did not mean abandoning the Pacific. The United States continued to fight Japan aggressively, defending key positions, rebuilding its fleet, and launching counteroffensives as soon as possible. However, these operations were calibrated to buy time rather than achieve immediate, decisive victory. The Pacific War became a controlled advance, while Europe became the central battlefield where the future of the global order would be decided. As the war progressed, the wisdom of the strategy became increasingly clear. German resources were drained on the Eastern Front, while Allied pressure in North Africa, Italy, and eventually Western Europe forced Germany to fight on multiple fronts simultaneously. American industrial output ensured that losses could be replaced faster than Germany could respond. Every bomber built, every tank shipped, every convoy protected contributed to a narrowing of Germany's strategic options. The Axis alliance began to fracture under the strain, while the Allies grew stronger through cooperation and shared purpose. By the time Allied forces landed in Normandy, the outcome of the war was no longer a question of possibility, but of timing. Germany was fighting a war it could no longer sustain against an enemy coalition that had achieved both numerical and logistical superiority. Japan, isolated and increasingly vulnerable, would face its reckoning once Germany was removed from the equation. The collapse of Nazi Germany reshaped the entire conflict, freeing Allied resources and accelerating the end of the war in the Pacific. The decision to focus on Germany first was one of the most consequential strategic choices of the 20th century. It demonstrated a level of discipline, foresight, and strategic maturity that defined the American approach to global warfare. Rather than reacting emotionally to the shock of Pearl Harbor, American leaders committed to a plan that addressed the core threat to global stability. In doing so, the United States helped determine not only how World War II would be fought, but how it would end, and what kind of world would emerge afterward. If you like this video and want to continue exploring the decisions that shape the modern world, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Understanding why history unfolded the way it did is the first step toward understanding the world we live in today. See you soon.